Hello everyone, welcome to the video. In this video, we'll be talking about Elmish commands. Alright, now I have spoken a little bit about MVU and the pattern of MVU, or model view update. And in the videos, you see we work on using a model. We have an init function to initialize a model. We have an update function that takes a message and a model to return a new model, and how that all works with Sutil. But we've been using a simple version of this Elmish pattern, which does not include commands. And so in this video, we're going to start integrating commands because in future videos, we will need them. So we will need them because for now, we have a stock portfolio that contains positions and our balances, which is not defined yet, but that's fine. And this information will come from the backend. So it'll be a deferred query that we'll be doing. And for now, it's not deferred, it's just in the front end, and we just grab some seed data and render it to the front end. Well, eventually, we'll need to ask the server to get that information. And so that is going to require some asynchronous computations. And how that's handled in Elmish is with the use of commands. What commands are is basically a way that the init function and the update function can send messages to the update function. So let me repeat that in another way. Basically, the view function, when we create a store, so and it's kind of the same concept in like normal Elmish. We have a view function which takes a model and a dispatch in Elmish, and in Sutil we have a view function, and in that view function we create a store. We pass it the init and the update function, and that returns us a dispatching function. Well, that dispatching function can be used to send messages to the update function. So that's what the dispatch does, is it allows the view to send messages to the update function. Well, commands are a little bit like that mechanism. They allow the init function and the update function to send messages to the update function. So firstly, well, the init function is kind of easy to explain. So let's say in our case, when we initialize the application, what we'll want to do is we'll query the backend to get the data that we want to render, right? And so when we initialize the page, we don't have the data. So we start out with an empty portfolio, and we initialize the application with a message to fetch the information from the backend. So that's why a command here is useful, because we need to call the update function immediately, right? And so what happens is, in that case, is when handling the, let's say, fetch message, so when a message that's defined to fetch a resource on the backend, when we handle that message, what we'll do is we will define a computation to run that is asynchronous, right? Because if it was synchronous, if it was synchronous code to write, we will just do it in the update function, right? We can just go ahead and do that function right there. And that's like what we do when we switch tabs, so we already have that code there. But in a case where the workflow is asynchronous, we don't want to like write asynchronous code and do run synchronously. We want that to do it behind the scenes. So we can also return a model and a command to be executed by the program. Well, in Elmish, it will be executed by the program. So in Elmish, there's a kind of a construct that's called a program, and that's basically the thing that ties the init, the update, and view together. In Sutil, what ties all these concepts together is the store itself. So that's implemented in Sutil, so I won't go into detail on that. I think that's a bit too far, but basically there is code in the libraries to synchronize all these functions together. And that's what is going to be running your asynchronous code that is a command. So that's a bit basically how it works. In the video, so in the tutorial in the next section, we walk through everything that I just talked about in pretty good detail. I explain what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. For now, we're not communicating to the backend because I want to keep that for the Fable remoting video. So we're going to have a full video on Fable remoting, which I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy. For now, we're just doing a dummy example where we initialize an empty portfolio, and we'll have kind of like fake getting the portfolio from the back end, which is not really the case. basically what we're doing is that after 2 seconds, we'll be loading the portfolio with a command. So I hope you'll enjoy that. I hope you understood. I hope I did a good job of explaining. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And liking the video really helps the channel out. So without further ado, let's go into it. All right, hello everyone. So I was about to do a video on fabled remoting, and I noticed that I wanted to make a short video before that to introduce commands in the like Elmish, Sutil kind of structure, I guess, or design pattern. So basically, up until now, we've been using, let's go ahead to the main function, we've been using store.makeElmishSimple, right? And so what this means is that our update function and our init functions, they don't use commands. So here there's no concept of command. And we're about to head into a territory where we want to have messages. We want basically the update function to return messages, if you will. So commands are a way to synchronously or asynchronously call the update functions with messages, but not from the UI. So the UI, we don't need commands because we have the dispatching function. But if we want the update function to issue more messages, then we need to use commands. Or if we want the init function to emit messages, we need to use commands. So that's basically what commands are. And we can start using them with make Elmish, probably just remove this. Yeah. So then it says, hey, init is not correct because it needs a command. And update's going to say the same. So basically we need to be returning commands for these. And so initially it's going to be very simple to get this to work. So we need to do cmd, which is command. And so this is the type annotation. So we just need to annotate it that it's going to return a command of type message. And for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to do command.none. So this is going to be what you're going to be using most of the time when you have no messages to issue. And so that's good. And then for the update, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to add command message here, and it's going to not compile. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do let model is equal to, and then I'm going to tab everything here. So that's going to give me the model, and I'm going to return model command none. So this should compile. You see the browser refresh. That means at least the front end compiles, so that's good. So now we got it working with commands, but actually the reason why I want to use commands is eventually to get the portfolio that's going to be loaded from the backend. And so there's this concept of lazy initialization, or lazy, like we need to fetch it first. So we need to render the page, and the page needs to be able to render without having the portfolio result from the backend, because that's going to be like asynchronously loaded. So that's why we need commands. And you'll see in the next episode, when we'll use fabled remoting, we'll actually have the portfolio being sent to us from the backend instead of having it hard-coded in the UI. It's going to be hard-coded on the backend, but at least we're going to progress a little bit. So we need to add some messages, because right now what I want to do is basically I want to start with an empty portfolio here. And so does this need an extra type annotation? Oh yeah, needs an empty portfolio. All right, so now we have an empty table, which looks really bad, but let's leave it for now. So what I want to do is I want to asynchronously add my portfolio, or change my portfolio, or update my portfolio, and simulate it only, like for now it's only going to be in front end, but I basically want it to be added to the model asynchronously. So what I can do is I can add a new message. So here we have only one type of message. So let's add another type that's called fetch portfolio, which for now doesn't need any It doesn't need any parameters, and we can have another method that's called portfolio fetched of, and then it can get a portfolio, or it can possess a portfolio. So this is basically the result, and it should be fetched. Right, cool. And now this update function needs to handle those cases. And so in the case of, let's actually do the portfolio fetched first, and then, because it's going to be less complicated. So when we have a result, a message called portfolio fetched, and it gives us a portfolio in the message, what we can do is basically update the model. So the model is now with portfolio equal to this portfolio, and command none. So this works. And now, so just to recap for this, what happens is if I receive a message that says, hey, I fetched the portfolio, this is actually the result of an API call, basically. And on that API call, what I want to do when I receive the result of the portfolio, I just want to add it to the model. And so I replace the portfolio in the model with this portfolio that I just received, and I want it to re-render. That's basically how it works. And to actually do that, I need to implement this fetch portfolio, or handle this fetch portfolio message. So when we receive a fetch portfolio message, the model itself is not going to change, but we're going to create a command that will basically execute the work to fetch the portfolio from the backend. But for now, since we're not really going to talk to the backend for now, because I'm going to do it in the next video when I'm going to talk about Fable remoting, now I'm just going to simulate that we received the portfolio like 2 seconds after we initially fetch it or something like that. So what we can do is basically let command is equal to, and it's going to be asynchronous. So we can do async. Then I'm going to do async.sleep for about 2 seconds. So that's 2000 milliseconds. And then I'm going to do, I'm going to return. So this is not the return a function, but it's return in async. But it's essentially the same thing. Well, not really. But if you haven't checked out my async video, I have a video on that. So if you want to check that out. And that video, if you want to watch that video, you should probably watch the other videos on computation expressions and all that stuff. I have videos on that on my channel. But yeah, so we're going to return basically a message. So what we're going to return from this is actually a command. So we want a command dot of async. And what this wants is actually of async, it wants a message, I believe. And I say I believe because this is in Sutil, so attempt either result start. All right, so in our case, if we go in the of async module and we do result, so this is a command that will evaluate an async block to the message. And so basically we have nothing like to perform now to like fetch. And so we might be using perform for Fable remoting, but for now we only need this result. And so basically this can actually go not here. So what I'm going to do actually is this is going to be a message. So I'm going to do message, and then I'm going to return the message I have, which is portfolio fetched. And I'm going to pass it the seed data.portfolio that we have. And then I'm going to do, this command is going to be command of async.result. And it's going to be the message, right? So this compiles. So what this is doing is, so I built this message here, which is async. And I'm passing it to a command. So the command takes async stuff and creates commands that kind of look normal, but what this will actually do is it will execute the command behind the scenes. So this, basically, if you want to understand it, what we're passing here, we're passing it to the store. And to be honest, I don't know the exact implementation in this case, but like in normal Elmish, it's the program. So you make a program with the init, update, and view functions. And that logic of calling the view, calling the update function is all handled behind the scenes for you. And so I don't know the implementation in the Sutil, so that's kind of why I'm like, I don't sound certain when I explain it because I haven't checked out the implementation yet. And so just know that it's handled for you basically. The command will be executed, and with the resulting message, it will recall the update function. But you don't really see that in your client-side code, or in your view function code, or your this my god, this file. Anyway, hopefully that wasn't too awful an explanation. So if you want this to try it out, basically what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of sending command none when we initialize it, we want to send the command of message, and then we just pass a message here, and the message is going to be fetch portfolio, right? So 1, 2, boom, and then it appears after 2 seconds. So that's pretty cool, and that's basically what we want to do. So let's recap. Instead of using Elmish simple, what we did is we make Elmish simple. We use make Elmish, and that means that our init and update functions we want to have. So that means that our update functions and our init function and our update function will both return commands as well as the current model, right? So it still returns the model, but it also returns commands. And commands are basically objects that will inevitably either return a message or no message. If it returns a message, behind the scenes, the update function will get recalled with that message and with the current model, whether it knows what the current model is. And when I say it, I mean the program logic, which depending on what framework you're using, it's handled behind the scenes for you. So it's handled in the library itself. And the update function, it gets called with a message in the model. And now you need to return a command as well as your model. So the command is most of the time is going to be none, but sometimes when you receive a message, you want to send another message with some extra logic attached to it. And if it's asynchronous, you're going to be using commands, right? So when it's synchronous, most of the time you're just going to run the logic here. So like this is synchronous logic. I'm not like really fetching anything outside of the program or something. And so that's why it's there. In our case, it's asynchronous. And I'm just doing this for now because eventually in the next episode, we're going to do Fable remoting. We are going to poke the backend to get the portfolio, return it back to us, and that's going to be asynchronous as well. But I just want to introduce the concept of commands beforehand. So that's why I'm doing this video. And yeah, so if we refresh it just to see again, so 1, 2, after 2 seconds, we fetch the portfolio, and then this gets called because the portfolio has been fetched. And we simply update the model with the portfolio, command none. And what Sutil does behind the scenes is when the model changes, it'll change the observables. And the way we wrote our code, we're listening on observables, and we get notified exactly for which part gets re-rendered. And so actually, let's open up the DevTools here. All right, so if I open up this part, which is the row, t-head, t-table, and yeah, okay. So if I do Control F5 here, 1, 2, 3, you can see that this div gets re-rendered, this table does, and it gets added the row and everything, without like re-rendering the whole page and without a virtual DOM. So that's kind of the point of Sutil, and you pay a price of extra boilerplate. Cool. So let's send it out to the outro. All right. Hope you enjoyed that. It was a really cool episode to film. Leaving a like and commenting really helps the channel out, so I appreciate that, and subscribe for more. Next video will be, to be honest, next video is going to be pretty boring. We're going to be updating Sutil, and we're doing a bit of refactoring, so if you enjoy that process, maybe you'll like it, but it's not like a super necessary video, I'll be honest. But last time I did something behind the scenes, people were kind of, oh, I wanted to see that, so I'm including the video, so like people really want to follow along can follow along, but whatever. More on that in the next video, and yeah, so subscribe for more, because the next few videos are gonna be really cool. I just filmed all of the next few videos, are gonna be really cool. Hopefully you'll check them out. So subscribe for that. And if you or your team needs some help with your F# projects, you can contact me. I do freelance F# software development and consulting, so you can check out my website down below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in that next video. Peace!